It is Friday, January 31st. Let's talk PlayStation. All right, another pretty good month of PS5 rumor and speculation, and not much facts to go on. But first, our PS Plus reminders. The January games are Uncharted the Nathan Drake Collection and Goat Simulator. You have till the 3rd to grab these because come the 4th, the February games have been announced, and it's looking really good. So we're getting Bioshock Collection, Sims 4, and a bonus title, which the way that they say that almost makes it seem like that's not going to be a trend going forward, but bonus title, PlayStation VR game, Firewall 0 Hour, so a very solid VR game that's very welcomed. Bioshock, it's a great franchise, of course, it's fantastic. Most people probably played it, but it's the collection, so you get 3 games. Maybe there's one in there that you're missing, and if you've avoided this franchise entirely, please play this. And then Sims 4, a very good time waster. So yeah, that's a great month. I'm very pleased about that. Now, I want to start off actually by going to last Saturday, because we had 2 PS5 leaks that hit the internet, which were very convincing to a lot of people. So if you didn't see the follow-up to these, they were both fake. The first one was a boot-up video of the PlayStation 5. It appeared that there was a console on the desk, and then a full boot-up animation. This turned out to be fake. I mean, if you watch the video, you could pick up on how it was fake, but it appeared that the guy who made this used a virtual machine to fake the boot-up sequence, and he actually made a video detailing how he did this. And the PS5 on the desk was actually completely computer-generated. The guy was a 3D graphics artist, so that explains that. Over on the PS5 Reddit, we had somebody that doctored up some UI images from the UI image that we saw on 4chan about 2 weeks ago, and there were some pretty good similarities there, but you could tell that those were also fake. He even posted like a 2-second video of the UI moving, which I think was actually a dead giveaway that it wasn't the real deal. But so keep that in mind. There's a lot of fakes going on, a lot of fake leaks, so that's, you know, trying to be very precautionary here, and that's a good segue to our next news story about, well, the PlayStation 5 meeting or reveal event that we're still waiting for. That's the thing, is that there's so many people grasping on any information that they can relating to PS5, and I don't blame them. You know, we're really waiting here, and Sony's still being pretty quiet, but this one I want to talk about because the past week and a half, a lot of people are really zeroing in on Sony Hall in New York City, which is their venue that they hold a lot of private events. And it's public information. You can look up when there's a private event booked. And so people are looking at dates in early February. There's one in late February. There's one in March, thinking that this might be the PS5 reveal. The problem with this is that, well, there's nothing to go on, and it's really... This is a venue where you can do something like that. You can book private events, and it happens all throughout the year. So to say that it's for PlayStation 5, I think is a little bit too far-reaching. Just because it's in February or March doesn't necessarily mean that it will be PlayStation 5. Maybe it is. I don't know. But one thing's for certain, we're not going to get a PS5 reveal in early February, not in terms of a full stage reveal unless it's a state of play. That's our next news story. Very minor one, but we do have a new Pastebin post. Very minor, just says the PS5 debut during a state of play on February 6th. That'll show off a bunch of launch games. The problem with this, rather, is that, well, that seems like a lot of really heavy information to do for a state of play. So I wouldn't expect that, although I'll go as far to say that when it comes to Sony and how they're handling PS5, it is very atypical. You know, I know it's easy for us to look at a lot of similarities and try to look at what Sony did with PlayStation 4, but clearly they are doing it a little bit differently by not being at E3, by doing these Wired.com articles, and actually giving us a good amount of PS5 details. Like in the same time frame of PlayStation 4, which we got that first article for Wired in April of 2019. So when you timestamp that to with PlayStation 4, for example, we did not know anything about PS4 in that same basic window, right? So we're actually, Sony is handling it much differently. But to be honest, I wouldn't hold my breath for that either. If we get a PlayStation 5 reveal event or even a state of play, I would imagine that it would be much further out. At least with the state of play, it's possible that that could be sooner rather than later, where the reveal event needs press invites and things like that. Now, I want to move on to a bunch of stories relating to insiders. And I know insiders, it's getting to the point where it's getting pretty exhausting because there's just so many conflicting ideas between these guys. It's like the teraflop story, right? Where it stirred up a lot of good, constructive conversation because it was an interesting leak from that GitHub data mine about 9.2 teraflops. We covered that. Then a week later, some insiders claimed that it wasn't true. That's not what they heard. But the problem moving forward is that there's nothing new since then. Just 2.5 weeks of multiple insiders going back and forth about if it is or isn't true. That's why we're just really avoiding the performance thing when it comes to PlayStation 5 versus Xbox Series X, especially because I've been preaching this for a very long time. Power is not what's going to determine what sells the most amount of units. But anyway, I wanted to talk about Tedix real quick. Tedix is one of those insiders who, we used to talk about him a little bit every so often because in the early PS4 years, he got a few things right, but it's getting to the point now where a lot of websites are still reporting on him. I know there's a few other channels that might still talk about him. It's getting to the point where I don't think we should put much weight into it anymore when it comes to whatever he might post. He even clarified he's always getting secondhand information, so it could be wrong, and a lot of what he has been saying lately has been wrong. So it's just getting to the point where if you see, something from Tedix posted on something here or a channel here, I mean, let's not give it too much weight at this point until the information starts to be correct again, because he posted a tweet about performance differences of Series X and PlayStation 5. It's not even really worth going over because it's the same thing between everybody else, where one person will say something else and then somebody else will have a conflicting report about PS5 being at 9 teraflops, Series X being at 11, then we're hearing that they're both around the 11-12 territory, one saying PS5 has the edge, one saying Series X has the edge. Then there's the conversation of the SSD, which apparently PlayStation 5 has a substantial edge there, but then Series X just has a far more powerful GPU. But of course, teraflops isn't everything. It doesn't tell the full story about the SDK and what advancements are being made for game development. That's why it's just kind of annoying at this point. So there's that. But one insider that we will go over real quick, because this references a 4chan leak that we discussed not that long ago. This is from VGX, veteran over on NeoGAF, vetted insider, so he went through the process with the moderators to confirm his information. This is the leak that said PS5's slogan will be "It's time to play," which Europe already started using that slogan anyway, and then this leak said that Sony will be at E3 and then they're not going to be at E3. Well, over on NeoGAF, VGFX veteran actually bolded a few points in that initial leak, and then followed up by stating, "My sources just verified to me on the phone that everything that this guy mentions is 100% true." Now keep in mind saying everything, but I think he's only referring to the bolded portions there. And yeah, Series X is indeed more powerful than PS5. But the bolded portions were the price, $499. PS5 launch games include Gran Turismo 7, MLB The Show 21, Demon's Souls Remastered, Godfall, Legends. We have not really touched on that because it did seem very far-fetched, but looks like that may be something that carries a little bit of weight. Games teased at the PS5 reveal: Horizon Zero Dawn sequel, Marvel Spider-Man, new sci-fi from Naughty Dog, new IP from SIE Japan, new IP from London Studio, Final Fantasy 16, new Resident Evil, PS5 specs almost on par with Series X. So again, referencing that PS5 probably close to Series X. Again, Series X might top it out just a little bit more. But if you remember, that whole leak actually mentioned a number of things about backwards compatibility and PlayStation Now playing a huge role, Remote Play playing a huge role. So it's funny though, a lot of the things that were bolded though are actually pretty reasonable for the most part, which is what we discussed with certain leaks, where if they're too oddly specific, they probably don't have access to that information. And if they're too openly vague, like of course we're going to see probably a tease of the next Horizon, we could see a tease of the Spider-Man sequel, a sci-fi from Naughty Dog. I mean, maybe, but that's kind of pushing it. Legends from Sony Santa Monica, okay, well, we don't know what that would entail, basically, right? We know that Sony Santa Monica doing another God of War, but they're a big team. They could, do a secondary game that is potentially smaller. Maybe that's what Legends is. The Gran Turismo 7 we've heard a few times actually being a launch title, so that's not far-fetched. MLB The Show 21, that would be very soon, very early for that game. It doesn't release nearly that early with the baseball season, but maybe it could happen. It's just not super unrealistic. So the bolded portions are what he's saying is that their contact is saying that's mostly true. And then Heisenberg, another vetted insider on NeoGAF, followed up with also claiming that his source actually comes directly from SIE. He had basically claimed that, yeah, that's pretty much what I heard as well, referencing the bolded portions of that leak. So it's interesting because initially that 4chan leak, we wrote it off entirely, but the thing is, it also plays to the other side of it, right? Like even with Tedix, for example, he even mentions that he has information secondhand. So that's a problem with a lot of these leaks and insiders, that the information is often secondhand. It depends on how high up their contact is within the industry. If they're at a third party, sure, they have access to both dev kits. If they're first party, they only have access to one machine, but they certainly wouldn't have info on price. So it's so sketchy, but it plays on both ends of the spectrum. Now, in keeping with the insider news stories, we have an update on one from last week. Aesthetic Gamer, who tweeted out that he has heard that Konami is looking into rebooting Silent Hill with 2 games, one a soft reboot, one kind of like an episodic Until Dawn. Well, Konami has actually now confirmed that they are open to looking into how they can continue the franchise. So it was very vague how they worded it, but it was very much a PR answer of like, we are in the early stages. And I think this is them kind of doing a little bit of crowd control when it comes to this rumor, because it has been floating around a little bit, not too much, but they did state that they are looking into it. They didn't even really confirm development happening right now. So at the very least, there's a little bit of credence to Aesthetic Gamer, who had previously also gotten the Resident Evil stuff kind of leaked out a little bit early, Resident Evil 3 stuff, rather. Well, now he tweeted out about a new game from Capcom, which is not Dino Crisis apparently, which might have initially been what it looked like from the tweets, but he stated that this game was delayed because of a few reasons. Capcom's relationship with Sony and Sony reworking PlayStation 5 is how he worded it, more or less. And it's that bit right there that everyone has tunnel vision on, is PS5 getting reworked. So a lot of sites running off with this news story and then not updating the follow-up tweet to where he then clarifies, hey, it wasn't necessarily reworked, but rather replanned, and also this was years ago. So dramatically changing the original context of the tweet, where a lot of people thought, oh, that means that Sony's pumping more power to PS5 or something like that, which we all know, and as we've gone over, isn't really feasible this late into the game. That just doesn't happen. Making a console, very long process, takes years, millions of dollars. There's vendor lock-in with what's being built, with the supplier. It's very complicated. Things don't just change like that. Maybe you could take something out of the retail box that you were originally going to ship in the machine, but otherwise, the traditional thought that was obviously getting thrown around, not what's actually at play here. And to think otherwise is kind of silly. So with all the insider stuff out of the way, let's get to some more general purpose news stories like this one. PS5 was trademarked in Switzerland just recently, so maybe it's indicative that Sony might be doing their reveal sooner rather than later. Doesn't really say a whole lot because, well, it's very territory based, right? For example, Sony trademarked PlayStation 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 recently, right? Remember we talked about that, but that was specifically, I believe, just in Japan. So they do it territory by territory, but this came up and they just trademarked it in Switzerland. Next up, we have a Sony survey that is apparently going out to, I don't know how many people. One person on Reddit posted some screenshots of their survey. So assuming this is real, this survey is asking about some potential features for remote play in the future. And it's a lot of really fascinating things. So apparently in the survey, there's a number of questions relating to using remote play with a PS4, perhaps not connected to the internet, playing remote play on multiple devices like a Switch, Apple TV, Android TV, hiding unused controllers for the game to allow for more screen real estate, so presumably that's for devices that are all screen and no tactile buttons. A slim portable Dualshock controller for portable gaming, so a smaller little controller there. Exclusive maps and accessories for remote play, that seems really bizarre. Customizable button layout, that's also a bit weird because you can do this already from the PS4's UI. So if you're already using remote play, technically you have access to that. Connecting other controllers. So for example, an Xbox controller references mouse and keyboard. Offline remote play, how that works, I wouldn't know. PS1 and PS2 backwards compatibility. Now this is strange because this whole thing is referencing remote play, but it's talking about PS1 and PS2 games via backwards compatibility. I mean, if it's a native PlayStation 4 game, like even the PS2 games that are on PS4, it's natively released on the system, so that could be remote played already. So I don't really know what they're getting at there. Even with PS1 stuff, I mean, we have Parappa and like Final Fantasy, but it just, that seems very out of place. And then it also mentions parental controls for multiple users and things like that. So it's certainly very fascinating. I don't know if it's a real survey, so we'll see if it gets out to more people. But the thing with these surveys is that they're totally in this this weird area where they will openly acknowledge competitor platforms. They'll talk about features that we would love to have, but we never get, right? I mean, we've had surveys from like over 5 years ago that referenced PSN name changes. and it would ask, how interested are you in this? Sometimes this is Sony prioritizing some features over another. It could be things that they're R&Ding right now and they want to see if there's a lot of consumer interest, but it really depends on how many people they are surveying. I know the one thing right there that a lot of people are sticking to is remote play on a Switch, which would be, that would be, I mean, that's where we are right now nowadays, right? We're playing games on everywhere, using everything. It's even referencing an Xbox controller, so it's very far-fetched, but surveys are one of the places where they will reference competitor platforms. The dedicated screen from Sony, for example, like let's say it's a Vita where it's not playing Vita games, but rather it's just a screen, it's just a gateway to remote play your games, and you have a Sony customized little handheld there. That sounds like that would still need a lot of capital, so I wouldn't bank on something like that coming in the future, but hey, it's in the survey, so take that for what it is. At the very least, we do know that in the short-term future, especially with PlayStation 5, Sony's probably going to capitalize a lot on PS Now and Remote Play. Remote Play giving you access to the games that you already own on other devices. PS Now being that full-on streaming device where you independently don't need the hardware to play those games, and they serve that on other devices as well. Now, one thing that happened over the weekend was Bluepoint Games updated their website. Looks very professional, but some new, very minor revealing details that they have up to 90 staff now, so that's a lot. It's a good amount of people, and that they're trying to go for a huge visual benchmark on their next release, which we know is a PlayStation 5 title that many are still assuming is Demon's Souls Remastered, or a full-on remake, rather, because it does seem like they really keep talking this up. Whatever this project is, if it is Demon's Souls or something else entirely, looks like they're really putting in a lot of work, and up to 90 staff is a pretty big deal. That's a fair amount of people to really get the job done, and it looks like the studio is growing in a meaningful way where they're really trying to sell the job. So they have a few open positions, but they're talking about how, the office is located in Austin, this is what we offer, we're located to so many great things, come work with us. It seems like the studio is getting bigger in a very meaningful way, so certainly something to keep our eyes on, and I can't wait to see what they're working on. Now, remember, we lost another director for the Uncharted movie. Well, Sony has officially pushed back the movie, so it was supposed to come December 2020, but now it's been pushed back to March 2021. Not that that matters. Next up, we have two patents to go over. So the first one is a contextual AI assistant type of thing. The way that this patent is described, the game will basically tell if you're having trouble or getting frustrated or if you're stuck in an area. This AI could potentially shove some sort of assistance your way. In what form, I don't necessarily know. Again, we've actually had a few patents now relating to talking to your controller, having a virtual assistant on the PlayStation app, and now we've got this that sounds like it could easily tie into all of these things. So again, a contextual assistant, it would tell where you are in the game and if you would need help. And a lot of games offer things like this when the developer does it, but this sounds like a system-wide thing. It would be a software feature built into the SDK where developers could take advantage of this on that kind of level. And then the other patent is actually about picture-in-picture, and the way that it describes this one is almost like a game invite system. So for example, if somebody sends you a game invite, the way I'm reading this patent, the invite would actually show gameplay of the session that the person is currently playing that they invited you to. And the PlayStation 5, for example, it's not referenced specifically, but could load up that software and get the game ready in the background. And as you're seeing that picture-in-picture, right, you're playing something else, but you get an idea of where that lobby is. Maybe you could, if you choose to jump to it, your game is already getting loaded in the background, jumps right to that immediately. So that also sounds very cool, but as always with patents, we never know if this is something that they're actually going to stick to and release as a feature. But it seems like we are getting a lot of patents recently that paint a decent picture of what Sony might want to accomplish in terms of the overall UI, quality of life features for PlayStation 5. Now let's get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you can win a $10 PSN code, and I'd like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 code, it is very simple. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Follow the link down below to the Gleam website. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week. I am trying to pay for your games. Those are some of the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. On Tuesday, we did PlayStation 3 Online in 2020. Did it last year, and this was like so fun. This might be our annual thing now, but we checked a bunch of old PS3 games to see if we could find active lobbies, see if there's people we could talk to. So awesome. I almost just want to do it again, but everyone really enjoys that. So that was this past Tuesday. This coming Tuesday, I have 2 video ideas. You're going to get one of them, but I don't know which one, so you got to wait. Although I can say we got more unboxings coming finally. I know everyone misses those already, so don't worry, we got more of those in the pipeline. And that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Becker. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.